And so, Andy, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to turn it over to you and watch in case anybody else joins us, and love to hear the story of how you, why you decided to do this and some of the things that you know about and share with your clients. We always, by the way, sometimes people come into things like this and we have instructions to like, don't promote yourself. Well, in my world, the folks that we invite around the campfire, so to speak, are not your somebody who's going to abuse that. So please don't shy away from like letting us know if somebody did want to work with you, if things that you say today are helpful, like what would be the first step and how would they have a conversation with you. That's good. And by the way, for everybody, I also want to tell you this. We record these. We will use portions of this in some of the Facebook and LinkedIn things that we share with people. So I don't want that to be a surprise um, as far as anything you might share personally. And with that, Andy, yeah, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, Mike and myself actually have been connected for the last few weeks, so I recognized his name when he popped into the room. So, yeah, well, don't know exactly where to start, but maybe I can start with maybe the story you had kicked off. So I was working for a subcontractor construction company, and I was asked to take on the HR role. I didn't really have any experience doing it. At the time I was a project manager, and they said, we feel like you have good people skills. We feel like you'd figure it out. We feel like you'd work hard. Take the HR role is essentially how it went. And so I went, okay. And so I get into the HR leader role. We have like 140-ish employees at the time. And I don't remember exactly how old I was at the time, maybe 21 or so. And almost right away knew in this HR role that people issues start coming my way. And so guys showing up late, guys not getting along well, miscommunication between like the office and the field, all that kind of stuff. And I remember one day getting a call from an apprentice out on the job site, and he calls me, he says, "Hey Andy, I don't want to work with this foreman anymore. We can call him Fred." He says, I don't like working with Fred. I want to go work somewhere else. I want to go work on a different job site." And I'm thinking, you're an apprentice. Like, be quiet, shut up, go back to work, quit calling me, is what I'm thinking. I don't say that though. So I'm like, okay, I hear you, just be patient. Pretty much blow him off. And I remember a couple of weeks later, same job site, same foreman, different apprentice calls, and he says, "Hey Andy, I don't want to work with Fred anymore. He's just kind of an ass. He yells at us. He doesn't, every time we screw up, he makes a huge deal about it, and he hovers over us. Um, he's not fun or enjoyable to work under or work for." So I'm thinking, okay, well, that kind of sucks because Fred as a foreman, from my perspective or from leadership's perspective, is like he was great. His jobs came under budget. They were always on schedule. The customers always liked him. Like, from a business standpoint, he was great. He was making us money. He was low maintenance. Well, up until this point, he was low maintenance. And the tricky part is we kind of knew that he probably wasn't like the greatest people person. He wasn't like super easy to always get along with. Kind of a jerk. Yeah, but it had been ignored. And well, eventually, so I'm now in this HR role, and I ask one of the other leaders, I'm like, well, should we maybe go talk to Fred? Should like maybe someone say something to him? And they're like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, sure, we could. And so we set up a meeting. It's one day in the afternoon, and I remember we're in the conference room, big conference room table. Remember, I'm new to HR. I'm on one end of the table, and got my leader on the other side. Fred's on the opposite. And it's awkward. It's like uncomfortable. Like, we gotta tell this guy, like, you're a great foreman, but like really you suck at leading and the people don't like you. So we don't say it that directly, but ultimately the feedback we give him is, well, these we're getting calls from apprentices. They don't want to work on your job site. They want to go work under somebody else. And this is a tough, gruff construction guy. And I remember I remember looking down because it was uncomfortable, and he looks at the other leader, Fred does, and he says, "How long have you guys known about this?" Um, yeah, I don't know. Give him some vague answer. A while. And I remember sitting there, a little uncomfortable, looking down at my table. Goes quiet. I end up looking up and he's looking at me and he's got tears in his eyes and he's crying. And he says, Andy, why didn't you guys tell me? I'm like, because I'm a wuss, because we're all wusses, because we don't know how. It's awkward, uncomfortable. I don't know. And I remember thinking, like, in that moment, leaving that meeting, like, because the meeting comes to an end, and like, surprisingly, I suppose, or maybe not surprisingly, like within a week or two, things started to change, and the guys were calling us like, "Hey, it's way different now. I don't know what you guys did, but this guy's awesome to work for." But he truly just did not know. But I remember leaving that meeting thinking, like, how stupid. When we can't like communicate on like even some like minorly difficult stuff, it doesn't benefit the company, it doesn't benefit the team, doesn't benefit the leaders, doesn't benefit the customers. Like it literally benefits nobody except for me. I don't have to get uncomfortable. I don't have to go give the feedback or have the say the hard things. And I became like really passionate at that point to figure out why do people not have difficult conversations? Because like the team we had was great. Like they all worked really hard. Technically, they had great skills. We were like great project managers, great foremen, but we just didn't know how. We didn't know how to say the uncomfortable things. We had all these fears. We were scared we were going to hurt people. We were scared we were going to make things worse. We were scared we were going to do long-term damage to people. We were scared people were going to quit. So we just ignored it all. And clearly that was creating more trust issues. Because I put myself in Fred's shoes. If I get feedback after like 3 or 4 years, like, hey, by the way, you suck at this thing, and you go, how long have you known? And we're like, yeah, like forever. And why didn't you say anything? And they don't have an answer. In my mind, I'm going to be thinking, what else are you not telling me? Okay. And as far as I know, Fred is still at that company. I don't know any details about how things are going now, but I became like really passionate about learning about how to do these conversations because I didn't know how to either. And I didn't go to college and go to well, I went through like a coaching program, I suppose, but I read books and watched videos and I was in the perfect like lab to work on this stuff as the HR manager because I could like practice it, like these communication skills. And so, excuse me, a few months go by and we have another issue with the foreman, a different issue. This guy's real nice, real friendly. Um, we can call him Tom, and he is like the most friendly guy ever, a little bit older, getting close to retirement. But the problem we have with him is there's like this trend of his job's not making money. Now, when a construction project isn't profitable, there's a lot of reasons why, and there's a lot of it could be like the estimate, it could be the customer itself, it could be the architect and engineer. Like there's a lot of factors, and it can be difficult to identify why did this job lose money. Well, one of the things you can do is look at patterns. And for Tom, there was a pattern of none of his jobs making money, and there was like 6 or 7 of them. And so we're sitting in a leadership meeting and this issue comes up. The current job, we'll call it the school project, isn't profitable. And we're like, okay, who's the foreman? Tom. Okay. And so we start having this conversation of, well, do we need to talk to Tom? And this guy had been a foreman for many years. I mean, pretty much his entire career. And I don't know exactly what he was doing wrong, where his jobs weren't being profitable, but there was clearly something. And so again, it's agreed that we bring Tom in to have a conversation. And so we're sitting in one of the other guys' office, and there's like a couch set up and a few chairs on the other side of a coffee table, and we're sitting there, and I'm sort of like sitting in as HR, like listening, and my job is to make sure things are clear. And at this point too, it's not necessarily like a disciplinary meeting. We're just giving him like the feedback to start the conversation. And this is what it sounds like. They're telling him, they're like, well, Tom, yeah, you're a great guy. You've been with us for a long time. Um, we got to make sure that we're focusing on the important things. Things like productivity and teamwork, and we got to make sure everyone's on the same page. We got to make sure we're aligned. And because you've been with us for a long time, we respect you and we love what we do. And I'm thinking like, dang, you are being so unclear get to the point. And so about half hour into the meeting, I kind of lean over and I said, "Hey Tom, I don't know how clear we have been, but can I be like frank or blunt?" And he said, "Yeah, what's up?" And I said, "Your last 8 jobs haven't made money, and if they continue to not make money, you can't be a foreman anymore." And like the other guys like look at me, the other leaders, and they're like, and he's like, "No, that's understandable." And so the conversation now shifts towards like what maybe is contributing to the jobs not making money. And there was a plan that was made. Foreman leaves, now it's just us leaders, and they were like, um, one of the guys told me, he says, "Dang, Andy, way to be harsh." And I said, "Maybe, but maybe it's also just being clear." And I asked him, I said, was I mean?" And they're like, "Well, no, you weren't mean really, but you were like, that was like a little bit harsh." And from there, it kind of stuck with me, and that like we have like these fears of like hurting people or like offending or hurting their feelings, and like all those fears are good and normal maybe. But I've learned that if we don't be clear with people, we can actually do a lot more long-term damage or harm. So from there, I ended up leaving that. I was at the company for 8 or 9 years, ended up leaving, went to a smaller contractor, in the role as employee development. And I was in that role for a year where I did this training, difficult conversations, leadership training for about a year within that organization. And at the end of that year, we were starting to create goals for the following year. And I was visiting with my CEO at the time, and he said, "Well, he's like, you've trained most of our leaders, and what you do is really valuable." He said, "I kind of want to give you two options. One, go sell it to the market on our behalf." We were like a fence and deck company, and he's like, "We'll just start a leadership training branch, or you should just go do it on your own." I was like, "Wow, interesting." So I kind of got pushed out of the nest there. Um, did my first cohort for free. I had people in my network said, "Hey, does anyone want to come to the 16-week cohort? It's going to be in the evenings, doesn't cost anything." And so folks came there. Of course, didn't make any money there, but what I did get, it was referrals and content. So I started taking pictures of that class, and I would interview the folks that were going through it for free. Asked them all to leave Google reviews, and I started putting that content on LinkedIn. And from there, my warm audience on LinkedIn started to see that. They said, "Oh, you left your job. You're not doing this full time. We want to talk." And so that was in October. And then by January, I had like 3 more cohorts had signed up for the training. So now I feel like I'm rambling and I don't really know where to go from here, but that's kind of how it started. So yeah, I don't know, where do we go from here, Wayne?
Yeah, you're good. You're doing great. So October is when you started. When you referred to January, you mean like this January? Like this is pretty recent, right?
No, so I started 3 years ago. So
Okay,
when I had first started my leadership training, it was in October of what year was that? 2023? I don't remember. But anyways, I did my free cohort, and then like 4 months later is when I started posting that stuff on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's powerful, by the way, if you guys don't use it, or it has been for me. I had got like 3 cohorts signed up, paid cohorts got signed up like 4 months later.
great.
Yeah.
So questions that y'all might have, any of these are good. Like it could be that you want to ask about Andy's business or what he has done on LinkedIn because you heard that, or it might be that you have somebody on your team that you think needs to sit at the table like Frank, or you need to be more clear with Frank. We could go. I can always ask more questions. Like I wrote a bunch of stuff down with Andy, but also I want to honor everybody who's here, who's helping to create the conversation. What did you hear that you want to know more about from Andy, if anything?
I actually, not really a question, but I kind of, he struck a chord with something regarding that foreman, the Tom, where you were wondering, or the leaders were like, oh, were we harsh or like, what did we do wrong? And you mentioned about like, oh, we might have instilled fear in him, and struck a chord with me because that's exactly what happened to me in my last job. Like, I got a performance improvement plan, and the CEO was like, "You're under a tight microscope now." Like, as an employee, like, how does one recover from that? Like, obviously, I didn't, but like to be told you're under a tight microscope, uh, that was very like fear instilling to me. Like, oh crap! Like, what do I need to do now to get back on his good side? You know?
Yeah.
So and that could turn into a great question. Lots of people end up having people on performance improvement plans. Go ahead, Andy. Sorry, I picked up late that you started to talk.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, it seems like there's instilling fear in people, I don't think is necessarily a great way to lead, like you said there, Zach. But where I have found most leaders go wrong is we just are not clear enough or specific enough on what exactly needs to change. And so if I were to tell you like, hey, you need to be just like a better leader, or you need to improve your metrics. Well, now this person's operating of a place of fear and they don't know what to do differently. But if we can get like ultra specific, like very, very even micro specific on these are the 4, 7, 8 behaviors that I need you to do differently. I don't think there's anything wrong with putting pressure on people. Like at some point, the conversation does have to become like, hey, if this doesn't change, we're gonna have to find someone else. At some point, that shouldn't be the way it starts. Um, I don't know how much you want to share, Zach, but what I was hearing is that they probably weren't super clear on what they actually wanted differently.
So it was in a team meeting with um, the other engineers, my supervisor, and this particular CEO. He I was bringing up an issue that I came across with one user at one of our clients. I was working for an IT consulting business, just to be clear with that. And this one particular user had an issue with emails disappeared. Not going to get into detail with that. Um, and I found out the new guy we had just hired a month prior was on a project to migrate their environment up to Microsoft 365. And I just kind of was like, oh, let me also say this. I'm supposed to be the lead tech, the lead engineer for this client. Okay. But I wasn't involved with the migration project. And so when I found out the new guy was on it with one of my other engineer coworkers, um, I made a comment like, "Oh, okay, I wasn't aware you were on the project," and I said that with the intention of, "Oh, I could have used him as a resource, if I had questions because I didn't know that he was on the team, I couldn't ask him." And all I said, maybe it was the way I said it, but all I said was, I would appreciate if I understood where the scope of the project was because I didn't want to look like an idiot to the client if the client contact we have had asked me any question. I'm supposed to be the lead tech. They know I'm supposed to be their lead contact and their lead tech. And the CEO just blew up on the call, saying stuff like, I don't answer to you. You don't need to know what the project scope is because you're not on that project, so on and so forth. And then we just ended the call right after that. And that's when I got a write up a couple days later about it. And he was saying, you need to improve your attitude. Um, Supposedly, I had 3 bad reviews from clients. I'm not going to get into that, but
Well, no,
they were pretty much.
I'm gonna stop you, Zach.
Sorry,
So no,
sorry.
it's okay. Thank you. And like it's okay. Some of that stuff hurts. And so but that's quite a bit. And actually maybe Andy, there's something about 3 bad reviews or like just to tie this one up, like because I think it is helpful for business owners to hear the perspective of an employee who was put on a performance improvement plan and how you do that with clarity and how you do that without trying to there's a difference between fear and pressure is the other thing I heard in what you were saying.
Yeah, well, like what it sounds like, even as you're ending there, Zach, is you said that you need to improve your attitude. To me, that doesn't really mean anything. That's like a bundled term, attitude. And so we need to to be clear, we got to unbundle it to figure out what behaviors are actually fall under that. Um, and maybe the thing he wanted you to change is, don't push back on me in the meeting or something. Um, yeah, without clear direction, it's really difficult to change. It doesn't sound like he probably had the greatest, I'm gonna use a bundled term here, leadership skills. Um, but yeah, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Janet.
Thank you, Andy, for sharing those stories. They're very, very, very insightful. So I have some assistants overseas virtually, and I have someone who's been with me for over 2 years, and she has some client contact. I took some away from her because she made a lot of mistakes, but she's still making some mistakes with things like misspelling a client name or, giving the wrong dates for a possible meeting. She does bookings. And I've spoken to her about this, and she says that sometimes she feels rushed in her job. So we talked about maybe giving her a little more time, but then she said she didn't need that. And last year I gave her an optional bonus, that's not part of our deal, but I felt like I wanted to do that. It wasn't a huge amount of money. It was 10% more than what she earns on an annual basis. And my question is, well, I would love to be able to say, look, if you don't, or if you're not, we've had this conversation more than once. If you're not able to improve your accuracy, so that there's, I don't know, 2% mistakes for the year, or less, like make your mistakes somewhere else, not with clients. And I don't know if you can stay, or I want to look for somebody else. But the problem is, I don't know where to look for someone else, how long it's going to take. She came to me recommended by someone who used her, and she overall is pretty good. So but I can't have her like putting client relationships or potential client relationships at risk. So what would you recommend for a situation like that?
Yeah, that's a good question, a good example. Thanks for laying it out so clearly. Um, and you mentioned something there. I don't know how to hire somebody else. I think that often is a roadblock for us when we go to manage performance, because we're like, if it gets to the point to fire them, then I don't know what I'm going to do next, and that sounds like a lot of work to replace them. Uh, I think what's helpful there is, like, we're not talking about firing anybody yet. You're a little far down the line. So with a situation like this, where it's good to start is to try to understand why the bad thing is happening. And there typically is 5 reasons why people don't perform. So number 1 is they don't know that they're supposed to do it, which that one doesn't sound like you've already told her how. The second one is they don't know how to do it. No one ever trained them. Number 3 is they don't know when to do it. And so maybe they've given just instructions, and you're saying, hey, this is supposed to be done by Friday. And they said, oh, I thought it was due next week. The fourth one is there's some other roadblock. There's something getting in their way. That's more of a vague one, but there's something getting in the way. And then the fifth one is they just don't want to, or they aren't motivated. As leaders, often we go to number 5 first, meaning like, oh, they're just lazy. They don't feel like it. They don't want to. But in reality, that often is the last reason why. It's one of the first 4. And so if we look at those 4, Janet, she doesn't know that she's supposed to do it. She doesn't know how. She doesn't know when, or she has a roadblock. What one do you think is driving her bad behavior?
Well, 1, 2, and 3, she knows because I went to great lengths. I almost like blew my brains out to give a detailed standard operating procedure in writing, so she understands it. We've talked about it. We've met about it. She knows when to do it. She's gotten training. I would have to say other roadblock, and I don't know if it's time, like she doesn't have enough time, she's too rushed, she's rushing through things. But my fear is like, oh, okay, I'll give you some more time, I'll pay for some more time, and it's still a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to pay more money if it's not going away. I don't mind paying more money if it goes away. uh
Yeah.
but the motivation part, number five, like I'm very angry about it because I'm sick and tired of having to say the same thing over and over again. So I'm trying to like let my anger go, diminish. But it's weird because every time I get angry with her, she takes initiative and she'll do something really good. So
Mhm.
it's kind of, I don't really know the answer, Andy. I know
Yeah.
it's not one, two, and three. I'm quite sure about that.
Yeah. Is English her second language?
Yes.
Okay. And
Oh, I don't know that. That's a good question. It's in a country, I don't want to reveal too much information, but it's in a country where they do speak English, but there are communication issues, like weird communication issues. So sometimes I don't know I think English is the language that they speak in this country as a first language, but they don't speak it well. Maybe Spanish is the first language. So it could
We
be
I don't think we'll guess who it is or where they're at. Like what
Philippines.
what the Philippines? Okay, because sometimes there are cultural things. Andy, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, and I've had virtual assistants from the Philippines as well. And so I actually have similar experience with not specifically on spelling, but yeah, I've went through a couple of assistants that way as well. So you said you've trained her thoroughly, without going like taking up too much time or going into too much detail. Talk to me about how you trained her on this.
Okay, so her main role is to reach out to our target client every day on LinkedIn and then send a welcome message and just a soft introduction about what we do and do you want to have a
Okay.
conversation and then a reminder. So it's a series of things she does that she keeps track of on a spreadsheet. There was a time when I said, and we have the standard operating, she does that really well. We have the standard operating procedure and we have scripts that reply to certain things. At one time recently, she was not following the scripts the way that she should have. So I took that away from her. And I deal with the leads that are people who express interest. She only deals with the people who say no or the people who say not now. So I already took something away from her because after repeat
Repeat
discussion,
discussion,
she
she
changed.
changed.
Are you
Are you
getting
getting
feedback?
feedback?
I am as
I
well.
am
I
as
don't know
well.
if
I don't
that's
know if
you,
that's you,
Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's Jeff. So, can you mute yourself, Jeff?
Got it.
Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah. So, so it sounds like the issues though, Janet, are like she'll like misspell somebody's name in the message.
That and she'll like recently there was someone who requested a date 3 weeks out and this would just happen last week. That's why this was so timely for me because I have to talk to her again. She
Hmm.
and I really do have compassion and empathy and I care about her, but it's just like I'm sort of at my wit's end but with it. But what I was going to say is that somebody asked for a date 3 weeks out and she gave them like May and a non-existent date in April. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I don't know. I thought I was in May.
Yeah. I think what would be most helpful when you have this conversation with her, it sounds like we still don't know what the roadblock is. And I think the best way to do it is through asking powerful questions. And this is what's helped me in asking powerful questions, especially when you're feeling frustrated, is I want you to ask questions that start with the word what. I want it to be less than 5 words. Um, so what do you think? What made you do that? What is your first step? And what it's going to do is it's going to help him or her think through some of those things. Because what I would want to understand from her perspective is like with the spelling errors, and even ask her questions like, when you misspell it, what is the impact? What makes me care about that? And if it is she's just rushing or not taking her time, I don't think there's anything wrong with making a clear expectation, especially now you're frustrated about it, that if this doesn't change, I'm going to hire somebody else. How can I help you fix it? What do you need from me? Um, yeah, I'm not sure if it's a language barrier thing or if she's just trying to do a good job and she's rushing. Because of what I'm hearing from you is it's nothing with bad intention. It's just there's some roadblock. I don't know, how helpful is that, Janet?
Fantastic. Thank you, Andy, because it tells me exactly how to talk to her. And I want to be gentle and kind, but I have to do something about this. So it's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been in
And,
your shoes, so
Andy, would you talk a little bit at this point? I'm just cognizant of time. We're at 12:38, and we'll have time for like Christy and Mike and Marcus if you have some things. But I want to ask, how does the what you just did with Janet and a little bit of what you're doing with Zach and hearing the situation that where his boss may have not done a good job of being clear, et cetera. How does this tie into your work? Like, how does this fit in with either your training cohorts or the work you do with one company at a time, et cetera?
yeah. So primarily, I do cohorts with companies where we'll have classroom time where I'm sitting. I'm actually talking about communication topics. So, for example, I talked about the powerful question, starting with what. That would be an example of something I'd go over in a classroom. And on the back end of that, I meet with folks one-on-one doing coaching because in a classroom, people usually aren't going to raise their hand and say, "I hate my boss," or "I'm not getting along with my husband," or they're not going to say that in a public setting, but they will say that to me one-on-one. So in the classroom, I teach the topics back end, or after the class, I do one-on-one sessions where we'll actually apply what you learned in the classroom to your life.
It's great and helpful. And Jeff Large, welcome. Sorry to sit on your microphone there.
Yeah.
Jeff has been around Business Builder for a long time too. He owns a commercial laundry sales equipment company, and then they do a lot of service as well. And he's part of a larger organization that does this across the country with multiple businesses.
Yeah. And I apologize. I got hung with a contractor here and could not get out, of course, to the one meeting, Wayne, that I've been looking so forward to being in, because this subject is really a challenge for me because, Andy, I've been elevated to what's called the regional development manager for EVI. And so I'm kind of over everything from Kentucky all the way down to Key West. Got about 300 employees, and communication is horrible in the vast majority of the companies. And unfortunately, there's a lot of conflict and a lot of hard conversations that are needed. And it just puts so much stress. Some of them are for the operations, some of them are from salesmen. And I would actually, I did a little bit of research on you already too. So, and I'd actually, offline here, I'd like to get on a call with you and see if we could do something.
Yeah, absolutely. When you say communication is horrible, what does that mean?
Primarily lack thereof, but the biggest one is nobody wants to have the tough conversations.
Yeah.
So it ends up being the tail wagging the dog most of the time. And I have to admit my guilt here. One of my biggest challenges is just a simple one, and I apologize for taking up time here. But like my best salesman probably does between $4.5 to $5 million a year in sales in his region, but he is absolutely the worst follow-up person I have, hands down. If I get 20 calls saying that somebody's not followed up or called back, it's him. And, there's just a lot of ways I can use your advice here. Some of it is leader to leader, some of it is leader to manager, and some is, leader to customer. And this is just a very, very, heavy topic with what we've got going on in the whole Southeast region.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I get that. Oftentimes, the hardest ones to have difficult conversations with are the ones that are performing really well in other areas. We don't want to lose them. We don't want to hurt them. We don't want them to quit. So but yeah, there's absolutely a lot of good things you could do to get people to influence them to change their behavior, and it starts with being clear. Yeah,
Yep.
you and I can talk more about that, Jeff, unless Wayne, we
Okay.
want to deep dive that one now.
I think it's good to like take what Jeff said and put it in here, and now we know more about other people know where he's coming from, and maybe we get back to that. The other thing I hear coming up is Janet has fear of how would I replace this person and hire them. I don't know how, I don't know where they're at. This one was a referral. That's fear. Jeff has fear. I used to be in that role. One of my top sales guys was one of the worst when it came to certain behaviors, but you're hesitant. So I get all that. I just want to acknowledge Marcus has a training, physical fitness, strength training, purposeful health. And so I can imagine that sometimes how do you have tough conversations with clients? Maybe that'll come in. So glad you're here, Marcus. Christy, you've nodded. I see you following along, which I appreciate. And I wonder what's going on in your organization that might be helpful. Maybe you could spend a little bit of time with Andy.
Well, same. I mean, I think it's typically the same situation in any industry. For me, I I am wanting to improve my own leadership skills in terms of having those difficult conversations. But we're a company that's had anywhere from 70 employees. Now we're about 40. But so over the years, it's just, again, we're ever changing, ever evolving, and different players and different roles. But the two of us that have sort of led the organization, we've had to sort of pull people in underneath, and becomes a real challenge to figure out. Many of them have been here a long time. You're trying to figure out how to give critical feedback without upsetting the apple cart. So yeah, it's really just and I agree. I think I've been doing my homework on Andy as well, and trying to determine, again, where are our blind spots and where do we need help.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how helpful this will be, Christy, but oftentimes when conversations are difficult is because we don't have clarity on them. And so sometimes this is helpful to frame it this way, is if I had to take a video camera or take my phone and take a video of their behavior, what would I see or hear on there? So sometimes we'll be like, they have a bad attitude, or they're a bad leader, or they're toxic, or they're not a team player. Like you can't take a video of someone being a bad team player. Well, you could, but what would I actually see or hear on the video camera that's showing that they're a bad team player? And so then if I take that information, what do I see? What do I hear? And I bring that into the meeting where I'm having the tough conversation. If you are really clear, the conversations tend to not be so difficult. You're not
Yes,
attacking their character. I'm not being mean. I'm not yelling at
correct.
them. I'm just simply giving them information. This is what I'm observing. How can I help? And in the blue collar world, I don't know if this applies to you, but one piece of advice I give over and over, because this makes it worse, is with your voice, talk quieter and talk slower than you might think you need to. Because sometimes when we go into these conversations, we're nervous and our heart rate goes up. So we start talking faster and we start talking louder and we don't realize it. And what that can do is it's just going to increase the tension or the emotions. And so if you can intentionally talk quieter and talk slower than you might think you need to, it can help the other person and yourself.
I think that's so true. And, I'm in the middle of some really difficult issues, trying to address them. And I have, just tried to present the facts, focusing on behaviors, which I think is hard because sometimes those, that particular leader does not agree with how others perceive their behavior. But, one that I feel I have the biggest challenge with right now is someone we've moved into a role, and it's really a trust issue. Someone that's been here for a long time, and stories that have been told, others are trying to disprove, that, whether it's where they've worked before, or, so it's true, whether it's true or not, a lot of it is just speculation. And so I struggle with how to work through that, because this person is, he's been here for a long time, and I'm trying to give him some critical feedback and when it's, and how do you do that when it's really accusatory? So anyway.
Yeah, totally. And if you think back to, because trust issues is a bundled term. Like, what does that, what specific things is he doing? Think about putting it on a video. What would you see or hear? What is he doing? And it may be you said you used to work at Costco and you didn't. Or I don't know, whatever the thing, like he's doing something that's creating this feeling of untrust. And
Gotcha.
you have to be able to identify that. And it's difficult and it takes some time. So if you go to him and say, we don't trust you because we think you lie, like you're setting yourself up for a fight.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So you feel like it has to be really specific.
mhm.
And this is what was said. And I have had that conversation before, gave him an example of what someone had said that's no longer employed. But I think unfortunately people have been here a long time and there's still that sort of story in their mind. So I think, in my opinion, I just want to encourage him to right that wrong, whether it's, I don't know. Anyway. But yes, I will take note of that it really just needs to be very specific.
Yeah. It sure seems like a situation like that as far as coaching him. I'm being speculative here as well, but it's likely that he needs help being vulnerable, and
Yeah.
showing humility with people. Those are the two of the big things that build the most trust. And if he isn't able to be vulnerable, that's probably why people don't trust him. And I'm sure you have lots of examples of that. But yeah, thank you. Hope that was helpful.
Mike and Marcus, any specific questions? Anything you would love for Andy to talk about?
I don't think anything specific. I did show up a little bit late, so my apologies on my tardiness. It sounds like we're handling like maybe not confrontation, but just difficult conversations with clients, essentially.
Yep.
Or employees, team members, both.
Okay, cool. I only have one employee, unfortunately. She's pretty easy to work with, so that's fortunate on my side. But no questions from me, I don't think.
Cool.
Marcus, what's it like though? Like you're work. So Marcus and I are working a little bit together right now. Marcus is going to do some fitness challenge stuff for us in Business Builders. So what's it like though when somebody like week after week is like, Marcus, I'm not getting, big muscles and six-pack abs or whatever it is that they said they wanted. You must run into like, hey, the truth is like, you got to put down the, whatever Krispy Kremes or whatever that I like a lot. They're really good.
Yeah, no, it's very nuanced because I mean, just like it would be with dealing with anybody because it's such an individual and personal and vulnerable struggles that people go through and what I do with it. That's where, getting on a phone call or Zoom call, if we're not already doing that on a weekly basis, really comes in handy just to kind of get down to what is their actual current struggle, and doing some like motivational interviewing is one component of it, but also just figuring out what is a discrepancy. You want to get here, but these are your current actions. So maybe we change where the our definition of success, at least during this season, or break down that bigger goal into a smaller term one. But again, it's usually just a matter of figuring out what is the current discrepancy and what's the bottleneck in your lifestyle that is keeping you from doing that. Like for some people, I got one client who messaged me last week and said that Thursday he had a whole binge eating session. I'm like, okay, I'm just curious. Like, did you not have, because he said he didn't eat all day, and then he waited till at night and then got a bag of candy and some other stuff, and it was a stressful work day. And I was like, did you get any meal prep done leading into that? And he's like, no, I didn't meal prep for the week. I'm like, well, okay, so right there, because that one domino 5 days ago didn't fall, now you're not making the right choice come Thursday afternoon, and then it's a snowball effect throughout the weekend. So we recognize in that moment, hey, the one non-negotiables, you got to meal prep. If you're not doing that, you're going to fall to the level of your system, which is currently, I'm going to go binge eat and just, take out my stress on food because I didn't have that meal prep done. So I don't know if that answered that question. I will say, when you were trying to describe what I do, the easiest way to say it is comprehensive health and fitness coaching. Fitness and strength are a piece of it, but I have several people that were just simply working on walking or getting to a yoga studio or doing jazzercise, and I'm working on the nutrition component and lifestyle changes outside of the gym as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mike Green, anything that you want to add? I don't think we've heard from you, and then we'll just turn it over to Andy to finish out however he likes.
I'm grateful to be here today. I've learned several things. I harken back to my very first experience where I was making $100 a month as a intern, and I thought I was doing great. And then one day I get called into an office with a bunch of people, and they were saying, "You're not making it here. You're doing really bad. We're thinking about firing you." And that scared the hell out of me. And that was way back when I was 20. And from that day, uh, I've always make sure that people understand how best to work with me, tell them how to give me feedback, clear, concise, and timely, preferably not in front of anyone. And literally last year, I drove way out of my way to go shake the hand of that boss who didn't fire me and say thank you. Because if you would have, that would have changed my trajectory in my life. So this, what Andy's teaching is so very, very important because like me, they could have changed my trajectory for a period of time. I would have overcome and achieved, but anyway, so thank you.
Yeah.
Mike, by the way, wrote a book, if anybody's interested, called Wandermust, Wandermust, Wandermust. Mike lives in Alaska and he works out of that cabin, which is cool. He's coming to Rendezvous at Sweetwater Lake in May, which I'm excited to have him. The book is a fun, it's a great coach book. It's a great read. Mike has haven't you worked on all 7 continents? Is it all 7 that you had worked and lived on, right? And hitchhiked from upstate New York to Alaska, all written in the book, which is cool. To show his kids that the world in his school wasn't as dangerous as we all thought maybe it was.
My high school students, yep, when I was a school teacher. Mm-hmm. With no money or no food, I must say. It was crazy. Thank you, Wayne. It's a fun, fast read.
Yeah. Andy, I don't know if you want to work with Jeff a little bit or you just want to tie us up with how we contact you and how we can, it's always, how can we support you? How can we help you is important to me as well. I'll just let you take it from here.
Yeah, absolutely. No, Jeff, I'd love to visit with you more. LinkedIn is, and everyone here is on LinkedIn. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Happy to visit the people there or set up a call. Maybe to tie off what Mike was just talking about, I think that's an important point. That especially when we're in a leadership role, it's our job to give people feedback. But if we just wing it or just send it and it goes badly, like that person might remember that conversation for the rest of their life. And if it goes good and it's productive, they may also remember that for the rest of their life. I know for me, even for you, Janet, I've had virtual assistants and you never meet them in person. And for me, it's easy to lose empathy or almost like in a way dehumanize them, that they're just like this worker that's not doing what I want them to be doing, and I get mad. And but they are a person, just like anyone, of course. And if we get lazy with our leadership, our communication, or we flip out, or we whatever we're doing, like it can really impact them in a bad way forever. When people get fired, I mean, because I've probably been in 100 firing conversations or more that I've had to fire somebody, and I don't remember hardly any of them, but I would bet or imagine that each of them remember every single one. If you're the one getting fired, it's something you're going to remember. So maybe you could leave with that. Just remember, people are people, and just winging it is dangerous. Can be dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to wrap it up. Andy, thanks for giving your time. Thanks for being here. Everybody who's here, these campfire conversations are a sum of everything you contribute. So I don't take it lightly that you chose to invest an hour with us today. I appreciate all of you. And let me know too how I can be helpful to you down the road. All right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Wayne. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Go get them all.
Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.
See you, bro.